everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Nice to see you today. Sounds like my shirt is going. Ooh, I got. Okay. Whew. All right. See, even though we've been doing this for 4 weeks, it's always something. It's always something. But that does not stop us. I apologize for that. Great. Okay. Great. Thanks, Pearson. All right, we'll get started again then. Welcome! Welcome to week 4 in Catalyst. So great to see you guys. I'm glad you can hear me now. I'm glad I turned down the music and we can get started. So week 4, you're in stage 2 of the Catalyst learning journey. And stage 2 is all about understanding the context of your project. And we do that so that we're more aware of all the factors and all the forces that really keep you from creating something new that creates a lot of value. And so the best Catalyst work is done when you get insights about the system of issues around the project and really understand what there is, because as you start creating ideas, you're going to create those in relation to those challenges or insights you have about the broader context. So stage 2, understanding your project context. This is week 2 of that stage, and we introduced a lot to you last week about dimensioning and the 10 different dimensions you can research. And you're just continuing on that path right now. You're really enjoying 5 weeks of researching your project and getting insights and facts and figures and quotes from people that you interview out onto your research boards and trying to really immerse yourself in it. Now, all you have to do is take small steps, right? You shouldn't feel like you need a full week to do this. You should take an hour to talk to somebody or 30 minutes to talk to somebody. You should get together with your team for 30 minutes and brainstorm a couple different of those areas, of the 10 different dimensions, and maybe even assign across that team different things to take a look at, and then come back together for 45 minutes. So break up the work, share the joy of curiosity with your team members, and explore. Now today, I'm talking about one of the most important methods we use. And this was really, it's an innovation in kind of project work in organizations. It started commercially, although it was invented by Lucy Suchman at the Xerox PARC Research Lab, where she started paying attention to what people actually did versus what people said they do, or what the corporation said or the organization said people were doing or were supposed to do. And what she said is, well, why don't we go, she was an ethnographer, anthropologist, she said, why don't we go look at what people are doing and interview them and see what challenges they're having, then we'll have a better understanding of what's going on and we can create better solutions. And so today I'm talking about open-ended interviews. We've also referred to them in the past as show and tell interviews, because show and tell is such a nice way to think about these interviews. They are not predetermined surveys that you deliver in person or over Zoom. They are an exploratory conversation to hear the stories of the people you are designing with and the situation you're designing for. So open-ended interviews, ethnographic interviews, motivational interviewing is what it's called, I believe, in the healthcare field. It's where you develop empathy for others by hearing their stories and really relating to their lived experience with a certain situation. So let's get into it. I'm going to start with a little bit of a case study. And it was probably about 10 years ago, the Kellogg Foundation was looking at the dropout rate in the United States. And, you know, the traditional solution to dropout rates is to tell kids to get back into school. And just campaign after campaign to why school, that's what this is, why school is worth it, because, you know, people who get incarcerated don't have a degree and blah, blah, blah. And it's all this scare tactics. And Kellogg Foundation said, what if we assumed these dropout, the kids who don't go back to high school why don't we assume they're a talent pool that we're not nurturing? I was super inspired by that insight or that simple provocation. This is a talent pool of huge potential that we are basically neglecting and basically telling them that they're losers after they drop out of high school. What a horrible way to nurture the next generation of leaders. And so, sorry, went the wrong direction. So we got involved, and what was interesting is they already been working on it for about a year. I'll make myself smaller here. They were working on it for about a year, and they had not spoken to high school dropouts about their experience. They had recruited lots of consultants and researchers and people who look and study it, and they, all the experts, and they had not yet talked to high school dropouts, kids who weren't going to high school anymore. And so I said, so where's the work of you speaking with these guys? And we haven't. So I said, okay, our first thing to do is to recruit about 10 or 12 young men and women and learn about their experience and see what's going on. And so that's what we did. And there's something important about interviewing, especially when you treat it how you're supposed to in this line of work, which is you're treating them as the expert. And so we have an interview station, it's a mini TV interview. And this makes the people feel special, which is your first goal in interviewing people, is to let them know that they are the expert, that you're there to learn from them. And so we interviewed these young adults and really heard their stories. And it was amazing. We heard that one young lady who loved to write poetry was being told by her counselor and a little bit by her parents, oh, that's never going to make any money. You can't do poetry. Get back to school and do your studies. We heard about another young man who had to support his family financially, and so he was working, and we're thinking about, we're asking him, what are your aspirations for work or career? He's like, oh, I don't know. My uncle, is a maintenance man of these properties, and so I'm learning how to do that. I'm like, what else have you explored? He's like, I don't know. I don't know what other kind of jobs there are out there. And those were our core insights from this work, which is people don't see the opportunities that they have in front of them, often because of the constraints of where they live or the way they're being brought up. And our leadership in the country also just tells them, be quiet, go to school and get your grades. And we just saw a complete lack of understanding of the range of skills and opportunities they have in the world. And so besides interviewing, one of the things we did, and I just want to show you how these interviews relate to what you end up making. And so we found it wasn't very good at economic times at the time, and I found a storefront, which I convinced the landlord to let us use for the summer, 4 or 5 months. And I said, we're working at the Kellogg Foundation. We'd love to, lease this space at about $100 a month and do a prototype. And so we transformed this space into a place that we called Exposure Studios. And the whole idea was to expose young men and women to professions and young men and women who had dropped out of high school and accept the fact that they're not going back to high school, and then start exposing them to the work world and offer them an alternative path into a career by being inspired and putting in alignment with what they like with their skills. And so we took this property and turned it from an empty room into an IKEA space, an inspiring space. And what you'll see is on the walls, we took their words from interviews and we put them onto posters. And so as the kids started coming in, or the young adults started coming in, they started seeing snippets of what they had said on the walls. And of course, we reworked them in a way so that they were inspiring and curious and creative. And we've just filled the space with some computer equipment, you're capable, inspiring quotes, both from what they were saying and then adding to that. And then we recruited more kids who weren't going to high school, and we just started doing demos of taking them out into the field to visit places and then to have demos in here of what people do, and they would just show them on the computer what they do. And so here you see somebody showing them how they use a computer tablet to draw and illustrate things. And then we would let them loose to try those skills. And because they kept telling us in the interviews, I don't know about that, I don't know how to do that, I don't know what that's about, whenever we would ask them about alternative career paths. And so we would expose them and then put the tool in their hands and see what happens. And what always happened was magic, because somebody would have a natural talent for something and it would start showing. And so this young lady took a picture, she brought it in the computer and started sketching over her friend and brought everybody to great laughter, but it was inspiring and it was impressive. And so what I want to say is that this solution was deeply informed by the lived experience of these young men and women. And in all of your projects, we want you to understand that listening to, hearing the lived experiences of the people you're designing for or with provide great value to helping you figure out what might be inspiring to them, what might be adopted when they see themselves in the solutions that you're able to help bring forward. Okay, so it's about people. So open-ended interviews. They are participant-led, and they basically share their experience through stories. They tell you what's important to them. This is what's so interesting is, usually when we prepare surveys or interviews, it's all stuff we want to know. It's a very, and I say this with with very a lot of respect, but it's very selfish research, because you put a survey out there and you got 5 questions and none of the answers exactly match what I'm really thinking or how I experience it. And so when I take a survey, I'm always a little uncomfortable because I'm like, I'm not really saying I'm not able to tell you how it's really like. And that's what open-ended interviews do, is they tell you what's important to the people and how they see the world and how they experience the world. You get very rich information. It is not a limited data set. It is an expansive data set, and this is a good thing. You have fewer people. You don't have thousands of people you've talked to, but you have deep, rich information that informs you about the nature of the problem in a way that structured or quantitative research can't do. Now, you can always supplement this with quantitative. There's no denying that that's helpful, but by not doing open-ended interviews, people lose out on tons of insight. There is more data than surveys, and you discover things you never thought to ask or you never knew. And this is what's amazing when I ask people, why don't you go talk to 5 or 7 people? Oh, I don't know. And I was like, in my 20-year career, 25-year career, every interview provides some level of insight or like, I never thought about it that way, and gives you a better view of your project. And so you can see the world in a new way because you're seeing it through the eyes of others. So ultimately, it helps you define and redefine what your project's about, where the value is or where the issues that matter are. So open-ended interviewing is sitting down or walking around with people to hear how they do things and what they see, how they do things, what they care about, etc. So let's talk really quickly about 3 steps to doing an open-ended interview. You have to prepare a little bit, you conduct those interviews, and then you document the outcomes, or you document and analyze the outcomes. So it's really 3 things. Make sure you prepare, and this is not multi-year deep research. This is like, hey, let's get together for 15 minutes to talk about what we want to learn and who we want to talk to. So prepare. You're identifying people and or experiences. So you might say, and I'm curious how the distribution center system works between things, or I'm curious about how information moves between our partners. I'm just making up possible scenarios. Those are experiences or situations. And then you got to say, so who's involved in that? And you work back into the people. Oh, we could talk to Mabel, who's at that organization. I know that she deals with information flow, so let's interview her. So you're identifying people, activities, and experiences that you want to know more about because they're highly relevant to your project. Then you also write questions down with your team members about things you're curious about. What questions do you have about how things work today? Again, not how things could work. It's like, what is really happening now so that you're better able to come up with ideas that will fit in and help adjust that situation. So write down questions. In ethnography, the scientific term for these are foreshadowed questions. It's a way to get out of your head, like, at the end of these interviews, if we could say something about this set of questions, we'd be really successful. And you will be surprised. Every interview I've ever done, or every set of interviews I've ever done, those foreshadowed questions or those questions I wrote down before, I can answer them at the end. And that's really an incredible power of this, just interviewing 5 or 7 people. And then you prepare a basic discussion guide, and we're going to talk about that next. A basic discussion guide is nothing more than getting yourself comfortable with a simple, open-ended structure. Your first goal when you talk with somebody is to establish rapport, trust, respect, and permission with them. And so this is where earlier on I was saying, you make them the expert, because they are. You tell them, this isn't about telling me what you think I want to hear. This is about you telling me how things really are. I'm interested in what's happening day to day on the street, what things go wrong, what's not working well for you, because we're working with you to figure out how to make things better. So we got to know what's really happening, right? And so you're setting up this whole situation where you take out all the formality of, quote, research, or the formality or power structures that may exist, and you're really bringing it down and saying, you're the expert, and you're making them feel comfortable, you're listening, etc. Okay. Then you start the interview with a grand tour question. A grand tour is simply something where they can talk through an experience, a day in the life. In this case, I say, take me through your daily effort to feed your family. So we're doing a project on food distribution or something like that. I might ask them about their experience in trying to feed their family. And now when you ask that grand tour question, they might take a moment to think about how they want to answer. This is where you pause talking and just enjoy the quiet silence as they start to form their opinion, and they hear that you are ready to listen. And so if they ask any questions like, well, what do you want me to talk about? It's like, well, just think about how you feed your family each day and take me through what happens in the morning. Start out there. Give them a place to start. I'm not putting ideas in their head or anything like that. I just want them to take me through the first journey. So then maybe they took 5-7 minutes to take me through that experience. There's going to be different mentions of things in there that are going to be interesting to you and curious and part of your foreshadowed questions. And so then you say, oh, you mentioned this. Can you say more about that? Can you tell me a little bit more about what happens there? Same thing, you're going into detail, but it's open-ended. Tell me about. It's not even a question, it's a statement. That's what makes these interviews so powerful, as you just open up to hear how people live their lives, how they do their work, what they struggle with, what they love, what happens when it goes really well, and you're learning about them. And then you always conclude with deep appreciation and continuing to build that relationship and an invitation to follow up. And would it be okay if we have additional questions? Hey, when we start our ideation, after we frame the problem a little bit, would you mind helping us come up with ideas? Would you like to be involved in that? Or somebody else in the community that you may know would like to do that? Please share their name with us. And so you're building relationships as you run through this work. And at the end of this, I'll pop a link to tips for creating a discussion guide here in the chat. So then you conduct the interview. I kind of went into that in the first one, the discussion guide and how to go through it. So let me just state quickly. So that first step was prepare. You prepare the discussion guide. You aren't doing it yet. But now you have to recruit. And so now you have to think of recruiting as a specific step where you're going to get on the phone or email for 20 or 30 minutes and send out 10 to 15 invitations to chat or make 10 to 15 calls. And you got to make 10 or 15 calls to get 7 or 8 responses to get 4 to 5 people to talk with you, right? That's just how the math works out. And you never are disappointed if somebody isn't able to do it or doesn't want to do it. You're like, oh, thank you so much. If you know of anybody who would like to participate, let us know. I completely understand. You're just constantly empathetic and caring as you do your recruit. And so now you have 5 or 7 people. Then you conduct the interviews. And again, you're thinking show and tell and having them take you through what they do and showing you that stuff. And here's a very important part. You saw both in those examples I showed already or the pictures I've showed that there was a video camera set up. So we really look to gain the permission of the people we're speaking with to record either audio, just a simple iPhone or Android recording, or a video if you can. And you just say, this will not be shared without your permission. We're using it for internal purposes only to kind of show and help our organization understand what's really happening in the community. We won't share your name or things like that. We can keep it confidential. So you give them all the assurances and you respect those assurances that you're keeping it private, but it would be extremely helpful to be able to go back over what they said in more detail so you can understand it. And then when you're there, so if you got audio and video, and even if you don't, you ask to take pictures of their workspace or the thing they drew, or as Kathleen mentioned last week, the sticky notes she sees that people use as cheat sheets and stuff. You're looking to document somebody's world a little bit more and bring those back with you so that you can immerse yourself in their world. So you're trying to make it tangible. You're trying to make it visual. You're trying to remember the stories through the artifacts and the things that they share with you, and always going back to the video. And then the other thing I'll say, it's perfectly fine as you start to do your interviews and your understanding begins to evolve. You can adjust your later interviews to get more coverage of things that you need coverage on or that you haven't heard about yet. And just adjust a little bit so that you get a good set of interviews with the kind of information. Look at your foreshadowed questions and adjust. So ideally, you're doing 5 or 7 interviews. You know, if you're doing this in a big project, yes, you're going to do 10 to 12, but the numbers aren't large. But we understand in a time constraint, it's like looking for opportunities to talk to people. And then if you have distinctly different kinds of lived experiences, then you want to make sure you get 3 to 5 of each of those. But don't sweat it. You want insight about what's really happening in the world. At the level of humanity, when people share their experiences, it's very insightful about what's really going on. When you hear their real stories, you get a sense of what's happening in the context. Okay, and then finally, document. Now you come back from an interview or you get off the phone or off of Zoom for an interview, what's the first thing you should do? You should write down 10 to 15 meaningful things you heard. This is just we call it a brain dump. It's not the greatest phrase, but we get back from an interview and it's just like, okay, what did I hear? Well, I heard this and this. It's the things that stuck in your brain that you heard that really made a difference to how you were thinking about it. Get those down because you'll forget some of them for sure. So I call this the top 10 stories. Write down your top 10 stories from the interview. Then, and those are different. These are things you heard. These are facts. These aren't interpretations. The next thing you do is, what are my interpretations of what I heard? So the facts are really important because those you'll be able to bring back up on audio or get a quote or show a piece of evidence that thing is happening. So you need what you heard or what you saw. And then your interpreting is a separate thing, which is, I think that means that maybe we don't have to work on this aspect, but this aspect is more important. And so already you're starting to turn that interview into insights for your project. And then make sure you select photos or audio clips or video clips that support these things that you heard, that are an example, because those are super powerful when you go to share your latest piece of work with somebody and say, hey, we started interviewing people. I want you to see this quick interview. So it was really powerful what they were saying about this situation. Okay, so an open-ended interview, prepare a little bit. Who are you going to talk to? What activities do you want to know about? And what is essentially your foreshadowed questions? What things do you want to know about? And then just get comfortable with a discussion guide, which is an open-ended interview. Grand tour, more specifics, a great closure, okay? Then conduct them, execute them. Try to do those in a batch in a short period of time. Try to plan like in 2 weeks maybe next week start, but within 2 weeks have a number of interviews complete. And then documenting happens along the way. So we also have, you guys should have a copy, and I'm going to put the link in the chat, but you should have a copy of all the Catalyst methods, and there is a show and tell interview method in that deck of cards. And so check that out, read over that, you'll see patterns. And then we will go to questions here. Okay. Andrea's already on top of things with asking the questions. I appreciate that. Any suggestions on how to do these interviews in this pandemic era? Ways to make connection feel authentic, even through a Zoom screen or phone calls? Yeah, this is, it's a great question. This is where you really have to work on your non-formal human interaction skills and bring those to the forefront with humor and grace and empathy and care and questions when you bring somebody on Zoom. It's going to happen on Zoom. I mean, it would be lovely, and if I was in California, I would be trying to do this. I would be inviting people to meet in a park and sit on opposite ends of a park bench to try to meet them. Or if you're still have in-person service at your organization, intercept interviews are still possible, masked, distanced, but taking somebody in the fresh air and speaking to them outside in person would be great. Now, if you're in Zoom or Microsoft Teams or on the phone, it's just a matter. So think about how you act on a phone, or how you can act on a phone with a friend, a dear friend you haven't talked to in a long time. You can just feel the appreciation for each other coming out. It's like, oh, we haven't spoken in so long. Remember when we were in college together or whatever. Like, I've had a few of those experiences now because of the pandemic. But this is the feel you want to bring out. This is the feel you want to bring out when you're working with people across Zoom. You don't want to be formal. You want to thank them. You might even start with just tell me a little bit about yourself and how you're managing in this, in this pandemic, et cetera. And just, you have to be real. Tell me a little bit about one of your favorite hobbies. You can just find ways that you're personable and how you create friends or other acquaintances. You have to bring that to this kind of work. This work is all about building trust and people believing that you're truly interested in what they have to say. And in my career, I've done this across the world in other cultures, other languages, translation between them. And even in those situations, and this is not tooting my own horn, except I will say that it's possible, when you know how to build rapport with people and build trust, it works. It works on a human level. And I want you guys to bring that out. You're not your formal leadership director role when you're interviewing somebody. You are just a very curious fellow citizen in the community trying to learn about them. Okay, Veronica, can you put up slide 1, please? Yes, I can. So let me do this. Slide 1. Let's see. Do you want this slide? Which, help me out with which slide you might want. Slide number 1. I don't think it's slide number 1 you want. Maybe it's, just let me know if you see it. I don't think it's that. Yeah, maybe it's just this. I'll put that up there for now. Awesome. Other questions? What are you guys thinking? Take me through. Tell me more about. How did you? How can we? How did that happen? In what way? Awesome, Kathleen. Drop that in the chat. Oh, you already dropped it in the chat for everybody. Copy and paste that, people. Open-ended questions. That's a great way to do it. Okay. Other things. Yeah. Rigo. You know it's true. It's the true experts with the knowledge. This is what you're looking for and appreciating them for. Now, I didn't mention what you should be doing when you bring people in to help is always look for ways to appreciate them, but also compensate them for their time. We would compensate normal experts, and often we ask people to volunteer to come share their stories. It's great if you can find some way to appreciate them in the same way you would appreciate somebody else. A gift card, a token of appreciation, a t-shirt from the organization's gift shop, something to a small gift, a thank you card with a heartfelt message in it, something to let them know how much they're appreciated. This builds relationship and keeps them involved with you as partners in the project. Okay. I want to share one more thing. No, the one with the key points. The one with the key points. Maybe it's this one. I apologize, Veronica. I would have to go through it so you can see those. This one? Hopefully that's the one. Let me know if that works. And I will make sure, Veronica, we will follow up. These will be posted in the Catalyst Club. And I'll also reach out specifically and send you a link to these slides so you can have a copy of them. And other questions? You guys have any other questions? And take a screenshot if that's what you're looking for. And then I just want to play one more video for you guys, and I'm hoping this will work. But it is from this organization, My Block, My Hood, My City. Okay, great. I'm glad that was the right one, Veronica. I was guessing. Which browser do I need to bring up here? Okay, so what am I going to do here? Yeah, I'm going to do this. Hopefully you can hear this. I'll get me out of there.
If you want to do something, set your mind to it, figure out your path, and work on it. And when people tell you no, stop listening to those people. I grew up on the South Side, and I went to Inglewood High School. I came to United because I always knew that I wanted to go someplace further than the projects that I grew up in.
I really liked it, the panel. They gave us advice from the heart, so like they knew what we was going through and like areas that we come from and how we can better ourselves from where we usually are.
You can overcome all of this stuff. You just can't let it get to you. But from a personal perspective, don't avoid who you are.
if I was working here, I felt like I would be really nervous because it seems like you have so much power in your hands and you control so many things.
That's awesome. Okay, I'm not going to show the next one, but I wanted to show that because, put me back in there. I wanted to show that because there's a number of programs now that are all about exposing young men and women in the city who never get outside their neighborhood. That's what My Block, My Hood, My City does, is they have that Explorers program that I like to think was inspired by my work, but of course it wasn't. Lots of people were working on that whole issue of how do you help people see the opportunity in the world. But it's transformative to show people other experiences, and that's what My Block, My Hood, My City is doing with their Explorers program. Because the imagination of the people who, of the young men and women who are seeing that for the first time, they can start to see themselves doing those roles. You heard the one, the one young lady say, if I worked here, I'd be so scared. I have so much control over airplanes, et cetera. What a great organization. And the other phrase that I'll leave you with as I conclude here, I'll still be here to answer your questions, but the phrase that Jamal Cole, who is the founder of this organization, his phrase or his catchphrase is, what is one thing you can do today to make your block better? And so it all starting with these small actions. So he's still doing these small actions. He mows the lawns and recruits people to mow the lawns of the elderly people in the neighborhood who can't keep up with their yard work. He shovels sidewalks in the winter. He goes on a trash pickup day, recruits people from all over the city to go through a neighborhood and pick up trash. And this is a visible, tangible demonstration of involvement and making your community better. And it's having a powerful effect in Chicago. And he just keeps doing these very simple campaigns. And then he's very savvy about communicating them on social media and through the media. Of course, the news stations love these stories. And it's really growing the connection between neighborhoods in Chicago, which is one of the most segregated cities in the country, unfortunately. So, okay, I am going to come down to the last slide, or maybe I'll leave you with the image of the people who so inspired me about their experience, and I'll answer any more questions that you have. It's great to have you here today. Kathleen, giving $15 to $20 gift cards or offering lunch, it's important. Feel free to use your Catalyst funds. Living experts are our team members and not just subjects. Exactly. That's right. Cool. All right. Thank you for joining with me today. I hope that brought you some indication of why open-ended interviews are so powerful, how they will inform the project that you create, how they start to build the relationships with your community members who are the stakeholders, as we say, who are part of your project. And that is how you start to build the foundation and the strength that your project needs to be sustainable, to be successful, to be adopted, to be funded, to be given the resources eventually to scale or grow. It all starts here. It all starts with hearing the real stories from people who are living the experiences and can provide insight into what might work and what the solutions are. So thank you for joining me today. I'll stay on to answer any questions, but you know it's time for some music. Let me go to my other playlist. Hey, I'm still open to you guys texting us or emailing or putting in the chat some artists or playlists on Spotify you recommend and you want to hear the next time you join a live stream. So with that, thank you so much. Appreciate you guys.